Hello friends, my name is Shivam from DevOps Schools and I will help you to enable your learning process in various technologies of DevOps, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data and many more. This is our initiative to help you by sharing multiple tutorials and videos. And if you want any specific tutorials or any particular topic, then please do comment in the below comment section and I will help you with it. Also, please subscribe to our premium services on YouTube, which will give you access to more content and videos to enhance your knowledge about all these topics. Also, if you want me to help you with regards to the online trainings and classroom sessions by our qualified trainers, then please do write me at contact@devopsschool.com. Thank you.
Okay, at the class level, I am defining num is equal to 5 and I am defining self.num is equal to 50 at the instance level. So now that is C is inheriting A, so that what it can access all properties from its parent. So now if I say num from or num using object C, okay, num using object C, let me say object C dot num. Now what will happen in this case? So there is no variable called num in this, but it is defined in class A, right? So now what will happen? So this init method is not at all invoked, right? So this will not be pointed to 50, this will be pointed to 5. So now I will get the output as 5. Num using object C is 5. Okay, so now consider I want this variable has to be invoked. I want this value should be used. In this case, this init method needs to be executed. Okay, and also consider I have some other value here. Self dot value is equal to 5. Okay, and then I want to do some calculation. Okay, calculation is nothing but object underscore C dot value or num star star object underscore C dot value. So now I want C init method needs to be executed as well as A init method has to be executed. Okay, both has to be executed. So in this case, what will happen? I will get the output as 3125 only, because it's like, okay, let me give 2. Okay, so because it's nothing but 5 square, right? 5 square is nothing but 25. All right. So if I want to invoke the parent init method explicitly, I have to say super dot init. Okay, so like this we can invoke, okay, parent init method explicitly. So now both the init method will be executed in this case. Okay, now both the init method will be executed. So now what will happen in this case? Let's say print value using object C. I can write obj underscore C dot value. So now you can see the output. Num using object C, it is 50 and then 2, so output is 2500. Okay, got it, Ajmal? So if I want to invoke parent constructor explicitly, I have to give like this super dot init. Or what you can do, you can just init that is invoke that init method like this, a dot, that is parent class name dot underscore underscore init underscore underscore of self. Either one you can use. Okay, either you can use this or you can use this, both will work, no problem at all. Ajmal, is it clear?
Yeah, it is clear, Mohan.
Yeah. So third level of inheritances, that is third type, is multi-level inheritance. Okay, that is it's like multi-level if-else statements. It will go to any levels. That is, it's like this. C1 is inherited by C2 and C2 is inherited by C3 and goes on. That is, C1 is inherited by C2. In turn, C2 is inherited by C3. In turn, C3 will be inherited by C4 and C4 will be inherited by C5. So this is nothing but multi-level actually. Okay. Now I am going to define one class called D, which inherits C. Okay. And then let me give init of self and then print in D. Okay. So now let me create the object for D like this. So now we know, because I am creating object for D, so it will check in its own method, right? So now I will get the output as in D only. There is no doubt in it. There is no doubt in it. Now consider I don't have init method in this. So first it will look in its immediate parent. Who is the immediate parent now? C. So C init method will be invoked. Okay. So now you can see in A and then in C. Why in A is getting printed? We are invoking A init method in this. Okay, now consider I'm changing the parent of D to B. Okay, so now whenever I create the object, first it will check in is D. There is no init method. And next it will be checked in B. Now it will go to class B. It will go to class B. So there is also no init method. And who is the parent of B? A. Okay, so it will go to A directly. So now you can see in A. So it goes from bottom to top. That is the hierarchy. It goes from the bottom level to the topmost level. For example, consider child, parent, grandparent. Okay, if child doesn't have something what is required for her, first it will check with parent. Okay, so if parent is busy or if parent doesn't have that, then child will directly go to grandparent and child will ask. The same concept. Okay, so bottom to top level. That's nothing but multi-level inheritance. It can go up to any number of levels, but method resolution will be from bottom to top. Clear, Ajmal?
Yes, Mohan. It's clear.
Yeah. So next one is multiple. This is the last level of inheritance. That is C1 and C2 are inherited by C3. That is multiple parent, one child. Okay, multiple parent, one child. So now let's say class E, which is nothing but some init method inside it. Okay, let's say print in E. Now I'm saying class F. Within this parenthesis, you can define any number of classes. Okay, you can have any number of classes in this. So, and then I can write def init of self print in F. So now let's write obj underscore F is equal to F. So now you know the output because F has its own init method. So I will get in F. Okay. Now let me just remove this now. Now what will happen? It will go from left to right. First it will check in F. If it is not present in F, it will go to A. If it is not present in A, it will go to E. That is, you can decide the priority among the base classes. For example, now you can see in A. Now, if I just change it off, let's say E comma A. Okay, so now E gets priority over A. Now you can see in E. Okay, So this is called multiple inheritance. So now coming to use cases where we can use these classes and objects. So the main reason for using, okay, where we can okay, let's write it over here. Okay, let's write it over here. That is where we can use object-oriented programming rather than procedural-oriented programming. The first reason is wherever you want to group, if you want to group the related properties and methods. Okay, related variables and methods. Second, if you want to have variable persistence, that is within the class you can modify the value in any methods. It is not required to have global namespace. Okay, it is not required to use global, or it is not required to use a return statement within the class. So if you say self dot some variable is equal to something, that particular variable can be used across the classes, okay, across the methods within the class. All right, so these two are the main reason where you can use the classes, that is object oriented programming rather than procedural oriented programming. Okay, that is what is this group. See, you can create library, that's also fine, but the second point you can't achieve with respect to procedural oriented programming. You have to follow some logic. Okay, and with respect to use cases, you can use anywhere. For example, you told you will be using for network programming, right? So consider you want to FTP. Okay, you want to do something like FTP. So FTP can't be done in a single step. So we need several parameters. Okay, so you can define any parameters, okay, within the class. Okay, and you can hold all the parameters within some particular object actually. For example, username, password, local directory, remote directory, okay, and then server name, port, everything can be used within a particular object. Okay, you can bundle it basically. Okay, so instead I can use group or bundle the related variables or methods. So in those cases you can use object oriented programming. So it will be very much easier if that is easier to maintain. Okay, so it is very easy to maintain actually rather than procedural oriented program. Okay, Ajmal?
Yes, Mohan.
Yeah. Take it down.
Okay.
Yeah, take it down. Yeah. So is it done, Ajmal?
Hello. Yeah.
Ajmal is done.
Yes, you can just scroll down.
Okay, that's it actually. Yeah, so below we have just those things. Okay.
Okay. Let me just
Right.
execute this.
Okay, execute it.
1 minute. What is the last output we should get?
So it depends. So you can see in A, multiple is in E.
Hello.
Hello. Are you able to hear?
In E, right? Yeah. In
Yeah.
E is okay. Fine. Yeah. I got
Fine,
it.
right? Yeah. So we'll take a break now, Ajmal. Okay. So after break, we'll see exception handling. All right.
Okay.
So we'll come back at 12:10 p.m.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Hello, Ajmal.
Yes, Mohan.
Yes, Ajmal. So let's open new file for exception handling. Okay, so what do you mean by exception handling and what is the purpose of this? Okay, the thing is, exception handling is nothing but error handling. Okay, so why we are doing this? So basically for smoothing, that is a smooth execution. Okay, smooth execution, and it avoids abnormal termination. So now consider I am having one statement like this, 1 by 0, and then I'm saying after statements. So I have something called print 1 by 0, and then I have something like print after statements. So now we know this is something like some error scenario, because we can't divide by 0 in programming language, okay, in real time also, because it leads to infinity, right? So the thing is, as per the theory, it is infinity. So if programmatically, we can't define those values. So this will raise some error. There is exception, runtime error. So whenever I execute this, the program execution will be terminated at this point itself. Whenever there is an exception, it will not continue the execution by default in case of interpreter programming languages. So now you can see, let's say Python exception handling. Again, I have done the same mistake. Okay, so let me just cut this and then let me just paste this out. And let me just close this folder. Okay, so now if I execute Python exception handling, you can see here, that is, it has raised the exception called zero division error and the error message. Okay, and you can't see this statement is getting executed. Okay, you can't see this statement is getting executed. So for this, what I have to do is I have to handle this particular exception. So now I can say try, that is, I can include the executable statement within the try block, and then I can say except. If I want to ignore the exception, I can just say pass. That is, if there is any exception, don't do anything. So in that case, I can just say pass here. So in this case, what will happen? If I execute, nothing will happen here. See here, offer statements, that's it. That is what is happening. Whenever there is an exception in the try block, it is directly going to except block. So in this, I have just mentioned pass, that is ignoring the exceptions. And then it is continuing the execution from that point. For example, consider I'm printing some statement like this, print error occurred. Okay, so now what will happen? If there is any error within the try block, it will directly go to the except block and it will print error occurred. See here, error occurred, and then it is just continuing with the next set of statements, like offer statements like that. But I want to know what is the exception that has been occurred. That is, I need to catch the exception. That is very much important, right? So for that, what I have to do is I have to say except exception as E. So basically, exception is a super class for all the types of exceptions, and E is nothing but object to this particular exception. So now what I'm going to do, error occurred. Okay, I can say some placeholder colon another placeholder, and then I can say format of. Okay, and then I'm saying e dot underscore underscore class underscore underscore dot underscore underscore name underscore underscore. That is, I am printing the name of the exception. That you can see something over here, right? That is zero division error. This is the name of the exception. So if I want to retrieve the name of the exception, I have to say this, like e dot class dot name. Then if I want to print the error message, I can just say comma e. So this particular exception name will be populated in first placeholder, and the exception error message will be populated in second placeholder. So now if I execute this program, you can see the difference, right? So error occurred, zero division error, colon, and then division by zero, like this. So this is how you can handle any exceptions. See, for example, I am correcting this statement because this statement is valid now. Now this will not raise any exception. Now I am having one more statement called print of string. So basically this will raise another exception. This will not raise zero division error. Okay, this will raise another exception called name error, and then name string is not defined. So this is the block where you can handle any type of exception. This is the common block. Okay, you can handle any type of exception. So in Python, we have more number of libraries, and in each and every library, we have more number of exceptions. It is very difficult to remember the name of the exception. Okay, so if you want to retrieve the name of the exception, you can just write these 2 lines of code, and then you can retrieve the name of the exception. Now, if you want to handle particular exception, that is, I want to handle name error explicitly. That is, I want to write different set of error messages if name error is occurred. For that, what you can do is you can just have except name error as e. Okay, and then I can define some other message actually, that is ne occurred, and then I can say comma e. So in this case, what will happen? In this case, what will happen? Whenever there is a name error, okay, let me give something like this using concatenation operator. Okay, so whenever there is an name error, so it checks from first except block till last except block. It's like the multi-level if else statements. So wherever you have handled that particular exception, that particular block will be executed and it comes out. So if you have multiple except blocks like this, okay, if you have multiple except block like this, whichever is satisfying the given exception, okay, that will be executed. Now this statement will raise name error, right? Now what will happen? First it will be checked in this line number 9 whether this name error has been explicitly handled. Yes, it is handled. Now what will happen? This statement will be executed and it comes to line number 14. So only one except block will be executed. See here, now ne occurred and then name string is not defined. Now consider I'm saying 1 by 0 now. So 1 by 0 will raise zero division error. So now you check in this line number 9 whether it has been handled explicitly or not. So now it is not handled. So it will go to line number 11. So this is a generic exception block. It can handle any type of exception. Okay, so in that case, it will be handled at the second place. That is, error occurred, zero division error, division by 0, like that. Okay, and also you can handle more than one error in the single block. That is, you can give like this, except you can give like zero division error, comma type error, okay, type error as E, and then now I can say common block, common exception block for zero division error and then type error. So now if any exception of type zero division error and then type error occurs, this particular block will be executed. Okay, so now you can see here common exception block for zero division error and then type error. Okay, so this is what the flow is. Now, apart from try and except, we have two more blocks. That is, we have something called else block. Okay, else block in case of no exceptions, and we have something called finally. It's nothing but finally block, always be executed, always be executed. That is, if there are no exceptions in the try block, okay, if there are no exceptions in the try block, only then else block will be executed. But finally block will always be executed. That is, in case of exception, it will be executed. In case of no exceptions, it will be executed. So now in this block, we have some exceptions, right? So now if I execute, only finally block will be executed. Okay. And for example, let me correct the statements. Okay, one by one, and then string, and then this. So now there is no exception at all. In this case, what will happen? First, it will execute try block, then else block, then finally block. Okay, so now look at this 1.0 string, else no exceptions, finally always be executed after statements. Okay, and one more thing is you can manually raise the exceptions. That is, like these predefined exceptions, okay, will be raised whenever there is an error in the statement. For example, if you want to raise the exception manually, yes, you can do it. That is, you can write raise, okay, value error. I can say that is either you can give parameter or just you can give like this itself. Okay, here I can give some error message like value cannot be this type. Okay, like this. That is, whatever you give within the parameters, okay, that means that is a error message. So now value error is not handled anywhere, right? It will directly go to the common exception block, and then it will print like this: error occurred, value error, value cannot be this type. So in this case, else block will never be executed because we know this is the statement will always raise the error. So if you want to raise the exception manually, you can just do like this. Okay, got it? Ajmal?
Yes, Mohan. So
Yeah.
the use case of
Yes.
this will be whenever we are not sure about the output, we can use this
Yes.
exception,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. So you can
Okay.
include anywhere in the code actually. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So now let's see the user defined exception. That is, we can define our own exception actually. That is custom exceptions. So let's define an exception in order to handle. Okay, in order to handle invalid number. Okay, so now let's say class. I can define one class called invalid number of exception. So whenever you define your own exception, you have to inherit this particular class. Okay, whenever you are going to inherit, whenever you are going to define your own exception, this exception class needs to be inherited. Okay, and then say colon. For now, let's consider as pass. Okay, for now, let's consider as pass. And then let me write some statement. Try. Okay, let's say num is equal to input enter number between 1 and 9. So if the user enters number between 1 and 9, we will consider as valid. Okay, the user enters between 1 and 9, we will consider the number is valid. Else, we will consider it is an invalid exception. All right. And then now what I'm going to do is we are going to say if num dot is digit.
To get our channel membership, click onto the join button, select the 3D99 plan and grow your skills immensely.
You guys know what is the purpose of each digit, right? We are checking whether only number is present in the input string. If it is present, I can just typecast it. Num is equal to int of num. Okay, so once I typecasted it, and then I can say if num in range of 1, 9, okay, I can just write print valid input, valid number, comma num. That is, sorry, 1, 10. Okay, that is, if the number is present between the range of 1 and 9, it is nothing but valid number. Else, what can I do? I can raise the exception, raise invalid number. Okay, and also if number has any other characters apart from digits, then also I am going to raise invalid error, invalid number exception. Okay, so now I'm just going to handle this exception now. That is, except invalid number as inum. Okay, and then I can just say like invalid number. Okay, invalid number, and then I can just give num like this. Okay, and then I can just give like this. So if I want to, okay, if I want to do it continuously, and then I can just give while true like this. Okay, while true, and then I can say like this, and then after printing the valid number, I can say break. Okay, that is, this particular statement will be executed until the user enters the valid number. So what is happening here? That is while true, which will always be satisfied. Now I am getting the prompt message from the program, that is enter number between 1 and 9. Consider I am entering some characters apart from numbers I am entering. So in that case, this this condition will be failed. So it will directly go to else class, and then this invalid number exception will be raised. Okay, invalid number exception will be raised. So it will directly go to the except block, and then it will print invalid number saying num like that. Okay, and then again it will come. Okay, again it will come to the try block. It will ask again like enter number between 1 and 9. Consider I am entering as 10 or 100 like that. So this condition will be successful. In that case, then it will be typecasted to integer, and then it will check whether it is in the range of 1 and 9. So basically you can write like this also, like num is greater than or equal to 1 and num is less than or equal to 9. So instead of writing these two conditions, we are just merging in a single condition actually. Okay, both are equivalent. Okay, both are equal. All right, so if it is not within the range between 1 and 9, it will go to the else class and it will raise invalid number exception. So it will print this again, it will come from the beginning. Consider I have entered 5. So if this condition is satisfied, so it will be typecasted, and then 5 in range of 1, 9, yes it is. Okay, and then it will print valid number as 5 and it will break the loop, so it will come out of the loop actually. Okay, so now let's see. Now let's see, enter number between 1 and 9. Let me say 5 ABC. You can see invalid number 5 ABC. Now let me enter 100. Invalid number 100. If I say 5, valid number 5, it has come out. Got it? Ajmal, any doubt so far?
Yes. Yeah, got it.
Okay.
So inum where you have declared or something, that inum is there.
That is, it's an object. So in the same line we are declaring it.
Okay, yeah, fine.
Okay, so now consider this exception is implemented in so many scripts, because it's a common exception, right? I can implement in any number of scripts, okay, across different projects. So now consider client is coming back to you and is saying she wants some better message That is, whenever there is a invalid number is entered, okay, he wants some better message. Okay, so in that case, what you have to do, first you have to check where all this exception is handled. Okay, you have to check where all this exception is handled. Okay, so and then you have to find all the files, and then you have to go through all the files, and then you have to make changes in all the files. Okay, that is a very difficult task basically, right? So instead of that, what I can do is I can define my own methods over here, saying def underscore init of self comma num. Okay, and then I can say self dot num is equal to num, and self dot error message is equal to invalid number like this. Okay, and then I can define my own method called display error message of self. Then I can just say return something something. Okay, dot format of, I can say first one is error message, second one is number, self dot number. So now what can I do now? That is, I have defined my own message, my own methods here in this exception. So now what can I do? Whenever I raise the exception, what will happen at this point is, okay, init method will be called. Whenever I raise the exception, init method will be called. So here it is expecting some parameter. See, for example, if I execute now, okay, and then let me enter something, okay, I'm getting the error because init missing one required positional argument now. Because whenever you raise the exception, init method will be called. So init method is expecting one parameter. So I can say invalid number of num, and also over here. So now what will happen? These two variables will be created. That is self.num, whatever you pass, that will be created, and self.error message is equal to invalid number hyphen. Okay, it will be created. So now what can I do? Instead of hard coding the exception, so now this is the object, right? Now this is the object. So now instead of hard coding the exception, message, error message, I can say inum dot display error message. So at this point, what will happen? This display error message will be invoked. So over here, I have something like concatenation of self.error message plus self.num. So now what will happen in this case? If I enter 5 ABC, you will get invalid number hyphen 5 ABC. If I enter 100, invalid number is equal to 100. And if I enter valid number, it will come out. So consider I want to change this error message. Now what can I do? It is not required for me to analyze in all the files, okay, where all this exception has been handled like that. I can take the file where it is defined, and then I can just modify in this particular file itself. User has entered an invalid number. Okay, user has entered an invalid number. Only in this particular place I can modify. So if I modify only in this place, wherever I have handled the exception, everywhere it will be handled implicitly. So now you see here I didn't make any changes at all, right? So now you can see whenever I say 5 ABC, you can see user has entered an invalid number 5 ABC. And then if I say 100, you can say user has entered an invalid number 100. And if I say 5, you can say it is valid number as 5. Okay, clear, Ajmal?
Yeah.
So this is the use of our own exceptions. Okay, so take it down.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, take it down. Yes.
It's done, Mohan.
Done, right? Okay. So you're getting the output, no?
Yes.
Okay. Next, what we are going to see is callback references. Okay. So let me define one function. Okay. Let me define one function, like very simple function, not much complex function. Let's say def calc of num. Okay. And then I'm just going to write something like, or let's take different function. Okay. So return num star star 2. All right. And then I'm going to write define welcome f name comma l name. And then I can write return welcome this one to Python script. And then I can say dot format of f name and l name. So these two are very normal functions. Okay. Now if I want to call that function, I can just have it like this, like I can say print calc. Okay, so like I can say like calc of 5, and then I can just write welcome comma and then welcome of, let's say, Justin comma Davis. Okay, so here, that is, in the first place I have just printed the reference of the function. Okay, in the second place I have invoked the function. Okay, this is nothing but reference, and this is nothing but invocation. Okay, so now if I just display this, so Python callback references.py, now you can see the output, that is function calc at something 25 and function welcome at something, and then welcome Justin Davis to Python script, like that. So here what I have done, I have just invoked the function directly. Okay, now consider I have some common function. Okay, like let's say wrapper. You can have any name, no problem at all. Okay, which is accepting two parameters. One is the function reference comma, and other one is the reference of all arguments that is being passed to the function. Okay, one is function reference, other one is reference of all the parameters which is being used. And then now I am just writing, so print invoking the function something, and then I can say format of. So whenever I print the function, it is printing the reference, right? It is just printing like this. Okay, but I want to display only the name of the function. So in that case, what can I do is I can just say function dot underscore underscore name underscore underscore. So basically, if I just say calc dot underscore underscore name underscore underscore and simply underscore underscore dot underscore underscore. Okay, so now what will happen, instead of printing the reference, it will print the name of the function. You can see the difference between this output and this output, right? Here I am printing the reference. Okay, but here I am just printing the name of the function. Okay, so function name dot name, that is function reference dot name, gives you the name of the function, and then we are invoking the function. Okay, inside the wrapper, that is I'm just writing function of args of 0, I'm saying like that. Okay, and then both the function are returning some values, right? So over here I can write ret is equal to something, so or else value, we can say any variable name you can have, and then I can say return value. Okay, so now instead of calling this particular function directly, now what I am going to do, I'm going to invoke the function using a wrapper. That is, I'm going to write, okay, Okay, let's write like this. Wrapper of, what is the first function name? Calc, comma, okay, and then I'm just going to pass the parameter in the form of a tuple, because here I have used args of 0, right? So I am just going to pass the parameter in the form of a tuple, that is 5 comma. Okay, so now in this case what will happen, this calc will be assigned to function reference, and this 5 comma will be assigned to the tuple, and then whenever I say this is nothing but function reference, and then this value will be passed. What is index 0 in this? This is nothing but this one, right? That is args of 0, nothing but 5. Okay, so now if I execute, you can see invoking the function calc, and then output is 25. Okay, so now we are invoking the function from another function. That is nothing but callback references, that is passing function as the parameter. So first one is like passing function as the parameter. That is, instead of calling like this, okay, we are just saying, okay, we are just passing the function as a parameter and parameters as a parameter. Okay, we are invoking this particular function inside another function. Now consider I want to invoke second one. So in this case, if I want to do, I have to say print wrapper of, what is the function name? Welcome, right? And then I can have some parameter like Clark, comma, Tris. In this case, I am passing two parameters, right? So in this case, I was passing only one parameter, so it works. It worked actually. But in this case, I am passing two parameters. So if I execute this, I will get an error, because welcome missing one required positional argument L name. Okay, because whenever I invoke this particular function, I should pass two parameters here, not only one parameters. Okay, so instead of writing like this, I can have something like star args. Remember yesterday we have seen any number of positional parameters called star args, right? Yesterday we have seen that. Okay, so now if I say star args, okay, whatever you are having inside a tuple, okay, so first tuple has only one parameter, second tuple has two parameters. So if you say star args, you can just invoke any function like this. You can see here invoking the function calc 25, invoking the function welcome class just to Python script. All right, so in this case I can just say end is equal to something like this, and then I'll be seeing, okay, hyphen I have to give, right? Or let me give something like hyphen. Okay, yeah, now you can see invoking the function calc 25 is the output, invoking the function welcome class is to Python script. Ajmal, got it? So
Yes.
we are passing the function as a parameter in this case. Okay, so by like this, right, if you have any function, you can just invoke it. Okay, see now over here what we did, we are passing a function as a parameter. Now what we are going to see, return function as the value. So far what we did, we are returning some integer or string or tuple or list or some boolean like that. So far we just see that. Okay, now what we are going to do, we are going to return function as the value. Okay, function as the value. So consider this scenario. Okay, like I have nested functions. Okay, we saw nested if, right? That is if within another if is nothing but nested if. Similarly, we can have nested functions. That is, I have something called outer function. Okay, in this I have something called num is equal to 5. Within this function, I am defining another function, def inner. Okay, in this I am just saying num is equal to 50. Okay, and then I'm saying print in inner num value. So, and I'm saying over here print in outer. Okay, in outer I'm printing num value as 50, and then let me say just return empty. Okay, or return 1 like that. Okay, so now what will happen in this case? So basically this scope of inner should be within outer, that's it. Okay, the scope of inner function is within outer, that's it. I can't invoke this inner function explicitly like this inner, I can't do. Okay, so now if I execute this, I will get an error. Name inner is not defined because the scope is limited to only within outer. Okay, but now if I say outer, okay, so now what will happen in this case? I will get only this statement in outer is equal to 5. Okay, that is only this statement I am getting, not this statement. Why? Even though there is a block within outer, this block needs to be invoked explicitly. Okay, this block should be invoked explicitly. Okay, so now let me just have it over here. Only then this block will be executed. Okay, so now if I execute, what will happen? Let's see. That is in inner it is 50. First it is going to inner block. Okay, in inner it is printing 50. But in outer, even though I use same variables, it is just printing 5. Because if I say num is equal to 50, this is only within this particular scope. Okay, num is equal to 50 will not be visible outside inner function. So in this case, what you have to do is, okay, what you have to do is, I have to say before this non-local num. You can't say global in the nested functions. In nested functions, you have to say non-local. Okay, so you can say global only in the outer functions, not in the nested function. If you want to do the same thing inside the nested functions, you have to say non-local. If you say non-local num, okay, if you say non-local num, what will happen? Whatever changes that you are doing to the particular variable, that will be reflected even outside the function. Okay, so now if I execute, you can see in inner it is 50, in outer it is 50. Got it now, Ajmal, so far?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, now if I want to, okay, if I want to invoke inner function outside outer block, because if I say inner over here, right, what I'm getting error. Okay, I'm getting the error saying name inner is not defined. But if I want to invoke this inner function outside outer, what should I do is I can send, that is I can return the reference of inner. Instead of returning the values, I can return the reference of inner so that I can invoke it outside as well. See, now let me say here function is equal to, okay, outer. So whatever I am returning, that will be caught in this now, right? So now if I print this function reference, okay, and also function dot underscore underscore name underscore underscore, okay, now what will happen? I will be having the scope of inner outside outer. Look at this. So now what can I do? Using this particular variable, okay, I can invoke the inner function. Okay, that is invoking inner. Okay, so now you can see the output like this. See, in inner 50, invoking inner is none because we are not returning anything there. That is the reason. For example, if I say return 1, okay, return yes, that will be printed there. Okay, look at this, invoking inner yes. All right, so if it is a nested function and if you want to access it explicitly, what you can do is you can return from the outer block and you can catch the reference into some variable and then you can invoke it explicitly. All right, Ajmal, clear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first we have to return it. Then you have assigned to the variable function outer one, right? Yeah. Main
Yes.
function. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, that is, you can have any variable name, no problem at all. So just for
Yeah.
clarity, I'm just having a FUNC.
Yeah.
Okay.
No problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So please try it out. Then we'll see decorators. Try it
Okay.
out.
Yeah. Please scroll down.
It's done.
Okay.
It's done, right? Is it
No, I
working?
think little more is there, right? No.
No. That's it. That's it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes. Let's be. Yeah, it is working.
Working fine, right? Okay. Right. So 1 second. Okay. So next we are going to see decorators. Okay. Okay. So decorators will see it later. Now let's see modules and packages. All right. Or we'll take a break for lunch. We'll
Yeah.
take some more topic and then we'll take a break for lunch like 1:45 like that, right? No problem, no?
Yeah.
Or
No
how is
problem.
it? No problem, right? Okay.
Yeah, we can
So
go.
now, yeah. So you want to go for lunch or how is it?
I think I'm fine. We can go ahead.
Okay, we can go ahead, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So like first we are going to see, like now we are going to see modules and packages. Okay, that is consider you are getting one requirement. Okay, so wherein you have to write 10 different Python scripts. So during analysis, you are coming to know that you have to write some common functions or common classes or common variables should be present for across all 10 Python scripts. So instead of defining the same function or same class or using the same variables, okay, in each and every script, you can define one library. That is, you can define one module. Okay, and then you can just import that particular module and then you can invoke that function whenever you need, wherever you need, like that. Okay, so now I am going to have, okay, one file called utils.py. Okay, let's say ge_utils. Okay, ge_utils.py. All right, so in this file we are going to place one function. Okay, in this file we are going to place one function and one lambda expression, okay, and one user defined exception. There is one class. Okay, we are going to place one function, one lambda expression, and then one user defined exception. Okay, so now let's take the function from here itself. Okay, let's take this one. I'm just copying from yesterday's one. Okay, so here I have a function, all right, which is used to validate the mobile number. And then let me take lambda expression like Let's take this one now. Okay, this is the lambda expression that I'm going to place it over here, and then user defined exception that we define it defined, right? So let's take that, this one. Okay, and also we can provide the documentation also. That is, we have the documentation for function, as you can see. Now let's have some documentation for the module. Okay, so I can just write the documentation like utility script. Okay, to first one, check the mobile number, that is validate the mobile number. Okay, validate the mobile number. Okay, or else let's write like this, that contains the function to validate the mobile number. And second one, I'm going to have some lambda expression to find the squares of n numbers. Okay, and third one, user defined exception to handle the invalid number. Okay, so now I have the documentation for the function. Now similarly, I'm going to have the documentation for the class. So if you want to provide the documentation to the class, right, as usual, before the first executable statement, you have to place the documentation. That is like this. Okay, so user defined exception to handle the invalid number. Okay, and then I can write valid number ranges from 1 to 9. Okay, so now this is my module, that is, this is my library, which contains one function, one lambda expression, and then I have some invalid number. So consider this is present in this directory, and the module the script which you are going to import this particular library is also present in the same directory. Let's see later on what we have to do if both are present in two different directories. All right, so now consider both the scripts are present in the same directory. Let's say call ge utils.py. That is, for now, just consider ge_utils and call ge_utils are present in the same directory. All right, so as a first step, what I have to do is I have to import a library, like import ge_utils. This is the first step I have to do. Okay, and then let me try to access the documentation first. Okay, let me try to access the documentation first. Okay, now first one, let's print the documentation. So now first I'm going to print the documentation of a module. Okay, document of module. So if I want to print the documentation of a module, I can say ge_utils dot underscore underscore doc underscore underscore. All right, so now you can see if I execute call ge_utils, you can see the documentation of a module is printed like this. So we need to access using the module name and the document like this. And also, let's see documentation of a function, document of function. So in order to access the function documentation, I have to say ge_utils dot function name val underscore mobile underscore num dot underscore underscore doc underscore. That is script name, function name, and then dot dot. Similarly, documentation of a class, document of class, I can just access file name, class name, and then underscore underscore doc underscore underscore. So now you can see all the documentation one by one. Okay, document of module, document of function, and document of class.
Please enroll our general membership for $399 plan to get access of all the parts.
Along with that, you can access our other tutorials such as Docker, Ansible, Jenkins, Terraform, Splunk, AWS, Azure, and various other DevOps related premium tutorials with our channel membership. If you would have any issues with our channel membership, you can drop an email to us at contact@devopsschool.com, or you can also unsubscribe from channel membership anytime if you don't want to continue or did not like the video. To get our channel membership, click onto the join button, select the 3D99 plan and grow your skills immensely. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries. We will reply to them at the earliest. Thanks for watching.